afterwards we need some Kyrgyz drink after this. I don't know what. Some powerful Kyrgyz. What do you have? Some sort of arak or something? What do you call it?
Kumis.
What's it called?
Kumis.
Okay, what is it? Is it a spirit?
It's milk.
Milk of horse.
Milk. Yeah, like sour, fermented.
Oh, okay. Is it like...
During this,
Yeah,
kefir?
yeah.
A little bit sharp. A nice taste.
it's not the same.
Not the same.
It's very different.
Okay. I like kefir.
But there's also types of like ayran, right?
Oh, Iran,
In
yogurt drink.
Turkey,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. So I think this they
Yeah.
have quite a lot.
Yeah.
I'm based in London, but I became director 5 years ago. So I was always in Moscow.
Okay.
And then we had 2 COVID years.
Two?
COVID years.
Yeah,
so we were working
yeah.
remotely. So
Yeah.
it's not that much.
And then Ukraine. So, yeah. But I get a very nice impression of the sort of atmosphere. Colleagues.
Oh, we have an agri team.
Yeah,
Great.
really nice actually.
Really great.
No, it's good to see that. It really is. Yeah.
Really not many people though with kids.
No, well, they don't. I took my daughter to Uzbekistan. That's strange. For the EBRD. I mean, if they're in banking, they know.
Yeah.
But you've got a B2B profile. You're not consumer-facing,
No, of course not.
so it doesn't matter.
Of course not. We are not. I keep saying we are not a conveyor belt.
Not a...
Conveyor belt.
No.
We don't do 100 deals per month. We
Yeah.
do 50, 60 deals per year.
So I'm waiting for someone to wave or throw something at me.
No, it's okay. We can still have another minute, I think. I think he's waving at you.
Okay. Welcome to this session, Our Food, Go Green and Digital with the Private Sector. My name's David Shookman. For many years I was a BBC News correspondent, and it's a great pleasure to be with you here in Samarkand. And welcome also to everybody who's watching online. I know that in the last 24 hours there have been some really big numbers tuning in, so welcome to all of you if you're watching wherever you are. Now, food is very much in the news these days, isn't it? And that's partly because of prices. Every day there seems to be a story on TV or in the newspapers about yet another food product going through very high costs, and that's feeding into the cost of living crisis for many people as they face so many other challenges. And of course the reason for that inflation is partly the war in Ukraine, partly extreme weather, pressure on supply chains, shocks in the system. And I think this really matters if you start to look at the projections for climate change in many parts of the world. that those pressures, which have already elevated food prices, really will do so much more in future. Now, with climate change, it's unfair. The impacts of climate change are not equally distributed. And this region, I'm sorry to say, Central Asia, if you look at the climate models, if you look at those projections for temperatures, and in particular for the availability of water, this region faces some really big challenges. And if you're a region like this one is, where agriculture is a really key sector, a mainstay of the economy, this is really, really important. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is that there are some terrific opportunities. There are technologies, there are innovations. There's a whole new way of thinking sustainably. And all of those create opportunities for many, many businesses in this region to take advantage of what's happening and to help society, their consumers, and this region itself. And we're going to be exploring the good and the bad in this session. The key question, as I see it, is can this new sustainable thinking, can these new technologies, above all digital, really help power what we could call a new green revolution? And how best to enable that with investment from the private sector? So I'm going to introduce our panel in just a second. But first, I want to turn to Natalia Zhukova, who's head of agribusiness at the EBRD. And just, Natalia, share with us your perspective, if you like, about the point of this session, your sense of why this is such a big issue.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to see all of you today. It's a very important topic because combining green and digital requires very hard choices to be made. This is not an easy proposition, and I'm really looking forward to discussing these things today and hearing from our panelists, but most importantly from the private sector, because we at the BID strongly believe that this is the private sector who is a driving force of the change. And this change and transformation of food systems is imminent and necessary because we all spoke already a lot at the annual meeting about inflation challenges we are facing, geopolitical changes and wars. We are looking at disruption of supply chains. We are looking at change of consumer preferences, whatnot, many other factors. And climate change and need to have climate adaptation and mitigation is becoming very much part of the journey of BID, coupled with digital solutions. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how our private sector clients are doing that. Just a couple of words on what we are doing as the bank. In agribusiness, over the history of the institution, we have invested 15 billion euro in over 850 projects. And Central Asia is one of the core regions for us because it represents 10% of our portfolio. 1.5 billion were invested into 256 projects, which, if you think about it, represents 30% of all deals the bank has ever done are in Central Asia. I'm really proud to lead a very young, dynamic agribusiness team. We are, as of today, 24 nationalities. We see a lot of opportunities in Central Asia. We need to tackle a lot of challenges, but I'm sure that jointly with our clients, we will make our world better. So thank you very much. Back to you,
Natalia,
David.
thank you very much indeed. And it's lovely that you've not only outlined the challenges, but also there's a note of optimism in there as well. And we will definitely try to pursue that during the course of this session. So just before I introduce the rest of our panel, we do want to involve all of you. If you're here in Samarkand or if you're watching online, we want to hear your perspective on the big challenges that we all face. Now, I think we're going to bring up onto the screen 7 challenges that we've identified And we want you to go onto your Slido. Now, you've got the QR code on the back of the seat in front of you, or use the code here, or slido.com, and use that hashtag 1595844. Now, if we can bring up the list of challenges, we'll ask you to rank them, 1, 2, and 3. There are 7 of them, and if we could bring up the next slide, that would be terrific, and we can see. So what they are is climate change. We heard Natalia talk about climate change mitigation and adaptation. Fragmented value chains, we'll hear more about that in this region. Food security, the challenge of digitalization, I can never say that word. I guess I'll just talk about it as tech, harnessing the latest tech. Knowledge and skills, this is quite a theme in terms of educating farmers, making them aware of the potential and through the value chain. Access to export markets, a challenge if you're a landlocked country. And perhaps crucially, investment risk. If you're a private sector company weighing up whether to invest, what are the risks for you? So we'd like you to vote on this, to rank them first, second, and third. And while you do that, let's play a little video to highlight some of the projects underway here in Central Asian agribusiness. Let's have a look at the video.
Traditional cultures and cities steeped in history, Central Asia is a region with vast potential. The region is also known for its rich diversity of crops, making agriculture key for local economies. But food security is under threat due to factors such as climate change, the inefficient use of resources, the fragmentation of value chains, and difficult logistics stemming from poor infrastructure. As modernisation in Central Asia takes place alongside rising incomes and new technologies, there is great potential for investment in greener and more digital agri-food production. We're harnessing the power of science, technology and innovation to help Central Asia realise its full potential in the agri-food sector. Our support includes climate mitigation and adaptation, circular economy approaches, efficient and sustainable use of energy and resources, digitalisation, and improvements in logistics. Together with our clients, we're helping agri-food systems to provide sufficient, high-quality and nutritious food for all.
It's great, isn't it, to see the potential there just laid out in that brief video. So I hope that's given you a chance to rank these challenges, and we'll see the results, I hope, in just a second. So while that happens, let me introduce the rest of our panel. Closest to me here is Uran Niyazaliev. He's Chief Executive Officer of Dan Agro, based in Kyrgyzstan, one of the big agri-producers in the region. Next to him is Jérôme Normand, who's General Manager of the Shiva Group, a major retail chain here in Uzbekistan. And I know you've got ambitious plans to expand, so that's exciting to hear about. And at the end, last but not least, Matthew Griffiths, who's a senior program manager with the OECD and a specialist in all things environmental, including water, which we're definitely going to hear more about. Now, I don't know whether we can see the results. Here we go. Now, we're all going to need an osteopath up here to check these results. But so, screamingly at the top, it's climate change, mitigation and adaptation. 41% reckon that that is the top priority. Access to export markets is number 2, and fragmented value chains number 3. Uran, when you see that climate change is number 1, getting produce out to export markets is number 2, and then supply chains, value chains is number 3. What's your own experience? What kind of challenges have you faced, and does it match what you see in that poll?
Hello. to everyone. Yes, Mr. David, it is much what we are now living every day in a practical way. Our company is also one of the companies who are also looking for the access to the new markets. Also, we are looking for the enlargement of the logistics. But the main maybe issue which we told here today is really adaptation to the climate change. And especially in the Kyrgyzstan and in the whole Central Asia region, one of the basic problems which has connected to this is the shortage of water. And this is problem will affect, I think, in the near future all the region. And for example, even if Kyrgyzstan is the top of the water of the Central Asia, but we still have a problem in the shortage of water. And as a company and as a maybe people who live in the agriculture every day, we see that the climate change is real, and this climate change will affect us. Already affected for maybe decade or 10 years already affected, and this effect will increase by the time, in my opinion. So for now, we have to start to adapt yourself. We have to change our behavior. We have to change our attitude to these problems. And this is only way, maybe in the coming years, in the near future, how we can resolve these problems. Problems, yes, of course, in Central Asia. I will talk in Central Asia and maybe especially in Kyrgyzstan, but the problems seem the same. And yesterday, during the session, Mr. Matthew showed us the map of Central Asia, and all countries will be affected by the change of climate. So maybe in our company, we already started to adapt yourself, and one of the alternatives which we want to give to our farmers is to change in the crop.
So we'll definitely be looking in a second at what can be done. Just a very quick question. When you talk about the shortage of water, is that we have a bad year and then a good year, or is it all the time?
For last 5 years, it is seems that it is a real problem.
Okay. So this is a profound and long-running problem.
Yes, I think long-running, because why I am talking about this, I already said that in Central Asia, 2 countries, the sources, the water resources. Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan.
Yeah.
Tajikistan, it's about 60% of water of the region, and Kyrgyzstan about 40% of the region. And even Kyrgyzstan, we see in our agriculture, we see that there is a shortage of water. So this means that if Kyrgyzstan having water resources, rich water resources, faces water shortage, then our neighborhood countries, our regional countries will also face this kind of
There's
problems.
a sort of chain reaction.
Yes,
So
of course.
thank you. So, Jerome, from your perspective as a retailer, when you saw the ranking from our audience here and online of the challenges, did that match your experience of what the big challenge is for you?
As a French company, we arrived just in Uzbekistan 1 year ago. Right now, we have 30 stores, and the target is to have till the end of the year 50 stores. So there is one aim topic was about the supply. Because as a French company, a lot of people told me, who asked me, when we will find in Uzbekistan French cheese, wine from France. So it's not our target, because we are in Uzbekistan and we are working with Uzbek people, and we have to find a new way for the supply. So we decided to have for each needs of products for our client to have 2 answers. The first answer is the leader, the referent of the market. For example, Nutella, Fanta, Sprite. And the second answer is to create our own brand produced by local supplier. We don't want to import, in fact, because it's too long, it's too far, and economically speaking, it's too
difficult.
Too expensive.
Oh, too expensive. Okay, yeah.
So that's why. So right now, we work with 50% of our assortment. It's producing locally by it's our own brand, and like that, we can reduce the impact of the environment. We have not to import a lot of product.
Right. So in a sense, then, there's a mixture of different challenges for you.
Yes.
As you have this ambition of creating a sense of a regional partnership, regional supply chains.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, that's...
And it's since the beginning, because in fact, in France, green is very important, and it's in the mentality. I saw that with my daughters, and this change starts in Uzbekistan, and that's why we want to impulse it, to push.
Thank you, thank you. So Matthew, what's your take? I don't know what your reaction was when you saw that ranking, that climate came top. Does that chime with your own analysis of the challenges faced by Central Asian agriculture?
Yeah, thanks, David. Yes, it does. I was not surprised to see that as the top answer. And in fact, investing in climate change and adaptation and mitigation really supports all the other options and paves the way for those other options that were presented to be fulfilled. Agriculture, it's clearly a key pillar of the economies of Central Asia, accounting for over 25% of the jobs in the region. And as you mentioned at the start, climate change, it's hitting the region hard. There's likely to be shortages of water, likely to be temperature increases, so lots of challenges to come. But as you've said, the agribusiness has an opportunity here as well to be a driver of resilience, a driver of a transformation there with new technologies, new jobs, new opportunities. So there's a lot. There is hope despite some of the challenges ahead.
Okay, well that's good to hear, and we'll want to hear more about the hope in just a second. We'll come on to that. Natalia, what was your reaction when you saw that ranking? You were surprised? Not surprised, I guess.
I was not surprised at all, but I wanted to cover a couple of points. So what came second, fragmentation of value chains, is very important, because we need to talk about also for Central Asia what is really important is connectivity, transport, logistics, modern infrastructure. Because if you look at for example, even reduction of food waste and loss, we all know that we lose 25% of calories suitable for human consumptions can go back to people if you avoid losses. But if we talk about post-production, transport and logistics losses, they represent 30 to 40%, which is a huge number. So from this perspective, for this particular region, having cold chain, modern infrastructure is of crucial importance. So I was not surprised. But second point I wanted to add is, if you look at export market, absolutely important for cross-regional integration, but also integration of Central Asian companies into the global value chains. But if you look at the fourth, it came equal with export market promotion. We talk about knowledge and skills. And this is also something that ranks high on the priorities for the region.
Right, so that's interesting. Well, let's turn to, if you like, some of the solutions. What kind of techniques, what kind of technologies or thinking can help Central Asian agriculture through what is obviously a crisis? Around, from your perspective, you're close to the producers, the farmers. What sorts of technology, digital, otherwise, can you introduce or encourage or support to help with this situation?
Mr. David, first of all, I think we should be rational. we have to start with the idea that if we will rational, we will have effective results. Secondly, for example, in our case, for example, we offered our farmers to grow up different kind of vegetables which are consuming less of water. This is one of the way how we see this and how we are going to solve this. But when we are talking about the different vegetables, this means that these vegetables have the same food value. They are, for example, if we talk about our case, it is lentils, and it is chickpeas, it is red lentils, green lentils. They are also easy to save, easy to transport, and they have also support food security. They also have to give some value to the land, because they have azote in his nitrogen, and this is after you are growing up the lentils, for example, there is a lot of nitrogen in the land. It is a natural fertilizer for the land. This kind of things is positive for the farmers and in the
so that
land use.
reduces your need for artificial fertilizer.
Yes, of course. At the same time, we are decreasing the use of organic fertilizers. And coming to the digitalization and the digital program of the agriculture, I think this is one of the way to increase productivity, one of the way to give an instrument to the farmers how they can easily manage their lands. For example, GPS systems already is used by the farmers. For example, now most of the farmers and producers waiting for GIS systems, geographic information system, which is now is on the way, is done by the government, and they think how to solve this problem. Another way of increasing productivity is mechanization. Still, when we talk about Central Asia, I think that is we have less, especially less investment in the mechanization process of the agricultural production. So by increasing this mechanization process and investing in this, we will have easily increased production. So there are several ways how can we help agriculture, but still when we talk about the agriculture, we should think about the climate change, about how to be rational and how to preserve the resources which we have now.
Right. So it's interesting to hear that already there is a take-up of some very helpful technologies, and I guess the challenge ahead then is to spread that and to make sure as many farmers as possible can make use of all of that. Jérôme, from your perspective, you're trying to encourage local, regional produce to be available for your stores. In what way are you trying to harness, take advantage of the latest technology to encourage a more sustainable, more efficient way of cultivating food here?
In fact, I made a mistake what I answered, because I thought that we don't want to import. We don't want to import the product, but we want to import all the best practice from France. And for example, to reduce our impact, the packet, it's a bio packet. For example, we sell the carton, all the plastic that we use, we want that we will reuse for the future. So, for example, last year we sold 24 tons of carton, 15 tons of plastic. And in this way, we want to use all the best practice. And about the digitalization, as a new company, it's not so easy, so step by step. But as I said, we will take all the best practice from France, Poland, and the store from Tajikistan that we have, to use them to reduce every time and quickly the impact.
So it's interesting that waste you see as potentially a harm, and you're trying to find a way of reducing it. Like
yes.
Having plastic blow all over the place.
Yes. All the product that not to put on the trash, for example, we give them to the zoo in Tashkent. And like that, they don't have to buy them, and it's used for animals, for example. We try to think about that. And maybe in the future, we will have one person, one teammate, who will be dedicated just for that, to think about it, because it's so important for the future.
And just a very quick one, are you finding that your consumers are happy with a change of packaging? Have you had any feedback about that, positive or negative?
About the packaging, it's every time we want to have a nice packaging, strong packaging, but I told to my teammates every time to reduce it, because if you have a big one, it's a lot of carton, for example. So we try to have less and less impact, to use less and less plastic, to convince our supplier to work in the same way. So at the beginning, it was not easy, because to understand the target, and now they thank us because we work like it's a partnership between us, and we have the same direction. But it takes a little bit time.
It'll take a bit of
but
time.
Now we work hand to hand on the same way.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Thank you. So look, from the point of view of the EBRD and in fact OECD as well, what's your take, Natalia? How, having heard of some of these innovations, what sort of support do you think is needed, is most helpful? How do you look forward with this? And I'll ask you, I'll put the same question to the two of you.
Look, we are the bank. We are not the conveyor bank, but we are still the financiers. For us, what is important, apart from the banking team, we have a very important advisory team which helps us to do projects, helping us with policy dialogue initiatives, working with various authorities to foster enabling environment for the private sector to invest, but also helping with capacity building. We work a lot, for example, with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And going back to connectivity issue, for example, we help link smallholder farmers and large processors of raw milk. I'll give an example of Kazakhstan, and I can see Napunda from FAO in the audience. You can talk to her because she's a real promoter of Collect Mobile app in Kazakhstan, which links very small farms of dairies to large processors. And this is a great achievement because the outreach of this program, which had a lot of hurdles at the beginning, is at least 2 million smallholder farmers. It's an amazing number. It helps you to monitor KPIs. It helps farmers to monitor their own KPIs, protein content, whatever they need. They have a predictable price. For the processors, they can optimize their milk collection routes because they can plan, seeing on the map, very often hundreds of kilometers apart, how they can plan their processing. So one thing. And then, of course, for us, this is very important to have sometimes blended finance approaches, and I think Matthew will talk a bit more about our new pilot, and also to look at the combined approach, no longer just green, just digital, just inclusive. It has to be a comprehensive combined approach, which is not easy. It's a challenge for us. The bank has signed up, basically committed to make sure that all our projects are Paris Agreement aligned. Not an easy job, but it's not an easy job anywhere. We'll have to start, and without clients, we cannot do it.
And yesterday, I was at the briefing where you, Matthew, and others announced this very interesting program, providing, I think, a fascinating framing, where you assess water, energy, and land in one kind of perspective, which I think is a very helpful way to move forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, we keep saying, for example, that we finance quite a number of greenhouse projects, hydroponics, etc. Great results, less energy intensive, but still quite energy intensive. So the next step would be to push them to move to renewable sources of energy, look at other options. So it's a constant progress of change.
Matthew, what's your sense of how this, I think you're calling it nexus. In fact, I've got a copy of the report here. You can fight over it later. How that bringing together those three factors, water, energy, and land, how that framing helps answer the challenges in the coming years.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the OECD has been working in Central Asia for over 20 years now. And really at the heart of the policy work we do in Central Asia, it's cooperation. And this cooperation takes place at many different levels. To allow us to do our work, our work's delivered under a Green Action Task Force, which brings together countries of the region with OECD member countries, with banks, with the public sector, with the private sector, with the NGO community, to exchange on policy lessons and good experience. Also, what we've learned in the region is that policies, environmental and agricultural policies, have to be grounded in economic reality. So again, through this platform, we're bringing environmental ministries together and really trying to push towards a whole-of-government approach to some of these challenges. Policies have to be implementable and practical. And this current work that we've been shaping with our partners on Nexus, or the linkages between energy, water and land, food, is all about this. Looking at climate change and some of the challenges that the region is facing, managing these precious resources as one gives a chance towards resource security and towards resilience. With the vision of our donor for this project, Germany, and its International Climate Initiative, a really multidisciplinary consortium has been established to look at these issues. In addition to OECD and EBRD, there's FAO, there's the Scientific Information Centre for Interstate Cooperation on Water, who are with us today, and also the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. So through this cooperation, we can look at these issues from a number of different angles. The problem with cooperation is that it's easy to talk about, but actually quite difficult to do in practice. So this program needs to be practical. We're hoping to use the analysis that we do, the studies that we do, the political dialogues that we've got planned to create the case and the momentum for cooperation. And through our partnership with EBRD, to bring practical examples, practical investment projects that touch this nexus to reality.
I think it's really interesting that you emphasize that final point about practical action, because I think sitting here with people engaged in retail and agriculture and so forth, and given the urgency of the climate crisis, you know, these are issues that need to be tackled right now. Well, another little observation is getting cooperation often within governments can be quite a challenge. I mean, certainly coming from the UK, you know, agriculture is the responsibility of one ministry, water might be the responsibility of another, energy a third, climate may be a fourth. And so it's quite a challenge, I think, and particularly if you're trying to get a regional approach, different governments, and then potentially competing interests within each government and different sectors. So I think it's a remarkable initiative to try to break down those barriers. So look, let's look ahead now to really what the opportunities are, because I think it's very easy to get a bit pessimistic, a bit despondent about these terrible challenges. How best to look forward, how best to frame the opportunities that exist? Because there will be, as you see in so many aspects of the climate crisis, there will be companies, governments, individuals who see opportunities, who want to be on the winning team, not left behind by the challenges. So we're going to ask you again to go onto Slido. You know the drill. Use the QR code on the back of the seat in front of you. If we can call up that number again onto the big screen if you're watching online. And what we want you to do this time is look at the 7 opportunities we've done. So there they are. So investing in climate change mitigation adaptation comes out as, okay, well, we're seeing, this is breaking news, folks. We're seeing this live. So investing in digital tech seems to be, well, that was the leader. It's been pipped. This is like Eurovision or something, isn't it? Number one, holding its position as number one, is investing in digital tech. It obviously means there are some interesting entrepreneurs, companies who are seeing a potential there. Number two, from where I'm sitting, is investing in climate change mitigation. Clearly, people investing in renewable energy, for example, or adaptation, techniques for increasing resilience. That's still number two. Enhancing knowledge and skills. We've heard about that from a few speakers, the importance of education, awareness raising. That's leapt to number two. I could do a running commentary for quite a while on this, but let's just see how this settles. I mean, it's fascinating to see that this is a live issue. Interestingly, I'm struck that at the bottom, at the moment, it may leap up, is reducing investment risk. One might have thought for private sector investors, that would be something that would be top of their minds. Uran, when you see all that going on, and you sense the potential for your company, take a 5-year view, looking ahead. What are I mean, you've got a lot of strengths. You're obviously very aware of the challenges, and you're very, very aware of the technologies that can help. Where do you see opportunities, and particularly when you see that list?
Mr. David, in my opinion, when we talk about agriculture in the whole region, agriculture is bearing also social responsibility. Most of the people in our region lives in the rural area. So most of them
they live
in rural area.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, and most of them involved in the agriculture. So when we are talking about agriculture or helping or supporting agriculture, we should think about the people first of all, and we should invest in them. First of all, we should investigate in their education. We should investigate maybe some in the digital solutions which will help them to do their agriculture, to increase their agriculture, increase their production. But at the same time, yes, of course, government in these countries, state supports them, giving some maybe subsidies. But this is also needs some money, some investment, maybe by donors, maybe by banks, etc. But we should support them so they have to continue to do their agricultural practices. Why am I talking about this? Otherwise, we will have migration from the rural area. Already we have most of the, for example, Kyrgyzstan, we face the migration of the population from the village to the cities, from the country to another countries to find the better work, to find the better life. But this is also pose some problems for the development of agriculture in the region. But if we look what we have today, we have in the region have potential. We have potential in human resources. We have potential in land resources. And still, I think we have potential in water resources. But all of this, as you already says, should be in one hand and managed by one hand, and should be, as I said in the beginning, we should use all of them rationally.
I suppose when we talk about digital, and you've referenced this, that with people in rural areas, sometimes in many countries, if you're living in a village or on a farm, you're the last to get access to a mobile phone network, to good broadband, to being able to afford the new technologies that might really help you. And I guess that's something that's an opportunity for somebody to step in and help provide that. But it is something to be realistic about, I guess, isn't it?
Yes, of course, we should be realistic about this, because we're realistic in that, yes, of course, in 1 or 2 years, this will be not the change, and we have not changed in their life, maybe in their practice, but in the middle term and in the long run, I think we can do something to change our agriculture and the way or in the life of our farmers.
Yeah, so there are opportunities for the private sector to really help enable that transition. Matthew, when you saw the list up there, the priorities from the audience, in terms of opportunities, I mean, it is interesting to think of actually people who are agile, prepared to take some risks, spotting a need, gaps in a market, given the potential that Uran has talked about in this region. There are reasons to be cheerful, I guess, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. And we've been scoping this project for a couple of years now, both with the partners, with the governments and the countries in Central Asia, and also along the way we've been talking to EBRD clients. And we've been really inspired with what we've seen. There are case studies already of entrepreneurs matching the crops with a certain water need with the water that's available in that area. So that's kind of adaptation in live form. Embracing new technology.
Sorry, just to be clear, they're picking particular crops that are just suited to perhaps a water-stressed area.
Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah.
We're seeing new technologies that been embraced that are saving water, but also increasing the quality of the product, so opening up new markets. We've seen then growth in demand for a product, creating a ripple effect into the local market, the supply chain, new jobs. We've seen talk about coupling water-saving technologies with renewable energy as well. So really looking right across the nexus. So yeah, there's a lot to be hopeful about. What we're trying to show, and I'll just give a little plug as well for this brochure, where we've just captured a few of those studies. What we're really trying to see here is the replication potential, opportunities for scale up and launching technology and approaches elsewhere in Central Asia. And what we feel within the consortium is key to that is the evidence base, because you're trying to convince a wide range of stakeholders, from governments right the way through to consumers. We feel we've assembled a consortium that can help with that. We've got analytical capacity, we've got policy advice, we've got investment support, we've got the opportunities to do political dialogues, there's the opportunity for capacity building. So there's the project should help with this, to capture these ideas, to create the evidence base and the business case for cooperation, which is really what we're talking about.
And I guess key to that is providing a linkage between major international organizations such as yourself, OECD, EBRD and others, and a farmer on the ground. And who does that job? How does the farmer on the ground get access to the expertise?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we see this as a kind of a top-down, bottom-up approach. So again, the consortium has got this built into it. So technical dialogue, capacity building, awareness raising, but also political dialogue, because potentially here we're talking about changing planning processes, changing strategies. So there's a lot at stake.
Great. Natalia Rice, I want to bring you in here. I see you were itching to make a comment there.
No, I just wanted to say that for this capacity building and linking farmers to the access to expertise, we will be working jointly with FAO. That's where they will really help us, because they have a lot of expertise.
The Food and Agricultural Organization.
Food Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. We as a BID will be working on a development of a financial instrument and to making sure that this pilot is working. I know that we are talking in very high words, so maybe a couple of examples so audience and private sector can think about it. We are talking as simple investments as automated warehouse, for example, machines, packaging machines.
Does automating a warehouse, what does that give you in terms of these challenges?
A lot of savings, but then everything has to be in a local context.
Right.
In a local, particular place, particular region, particular country. Because solution which is, for example, suitable for this particular land plot will not be suitable for another country simply because water resources, I don't know, solar approach is not the same. That's why we are saying that we are looking from the nexus, I'm still struggling with the word, but from the overall linkages perspective of the major 3 points.
But wherever you can, working with local partners who have the understanding of their own particular challenges and opportunities on the ground. Thank you. So, Jerome, cast ahead 5 years. I know you've got these great plans for expansion. You've got the ambition to develop as much as possible, a model where you're not importing, but you're encouraging production within the region. You're obviously optimistic about opportunities for that process.
Yes, for sure. And as you know, we have another company in Tajikistan. And as you know, there is no supplier. There is no production. And in
Tajikistan?
Tajikistan, yeah. Yes. And the target is that they will have less and less import from far supplier, and we will work more closer with them with our own product. Because our own product is the same quality as the referent, the leader, as I said. And tomorrow we want, because it close, the two countries are very close. So it's an opportunity for them to have good products, producing locally in Uzbekistan and maybe in Tajikistan in the future. But there is a lot of opportunity and digitalization. We will launch our e-commerce site till the end of the year. It's another opportunity.
And having heard of the challenges faced by Uran and others, what sort of actions can a major retail group like Shiva take to minimize the environmental impact and to encourage the best, most sustainable agricultural practice?
In fact, the better example that I have right now, it's come from France. Now we want to use the sun to produce electricity, and the target is to produce 100% of our electricity in 2-3 years. But it's an opportunity, and why not tomorrow to use it, this best practice, in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan.
That's really interesting. And Uran, as you're here in this conference and you're hearing these ideas or these ambitions, are you thinking all the time, how do I translate that? How do I connect that to your experience day after day, dealing with farmers, dealing with producers, trying to maximize opportunities for them and for you?
Yes, of course. This kind of meetings and sessions give us new ideas. We also visited here to see what is going on, to hear different kind of opinions, different kind of knowledge. And this is a good chance for the companies to learn something new about the sector, what is going in the sector, how, for example, European Bank see our agriculture here in Central Asia. So I have a lot of data, I have a lot of knowledge here. I have new friends and meetings. Thank you very much to the European Bank for this kind of chance given to us to have a lot of new friends and new knowledge, and to have new opportunities and new views on our business.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. And Natalia, just as because we're coming towards the end of our time here, I'm wondering whether Natalia, you'd like to just share your sense of what you've heard, where it leads your thinking. What's your mood as you cast ahead 5 years? If we all reconvene in 5 years' time, same panel, same venue, to discuss kind of whether the challenge, which is very, very stark and real, the extent to which that's been turned into an opportunity, as you talked about earlier on in your remarks about how do you benefit everybody. If you take a couple of minutes just to...
It's a tricky question.
How are you going to send us all home, as it were? Good mood or bad?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to be done. And the issue is that there's no longer we shall consider, we must do jointly investments into green digital. We haven't tackled the inclusion, but it's a third angle of the same equation requiring hard choices to be made, because if you automate something, then you reduce your labor. Then you have to reskill your labor. There's a lot of considerations about it, but definitely going green and digital is a must. I think that a lot of companies will benefit from it. It just requires a bit of a courage, and as we were discussing earlier in the Business Connect panel today, I really liked ABNMB approach, who said, don't hesitate to ask questions. We are not biting as the bank. We are here to help you. We are here to help you with advisory services. We talked also earlier today about financial literacy improvements. I'm really talking about Denagro, for example. They export 95% of their produce. This is amazing. They are one of the companies who started recently in Kyrgyzstan, the supply of the World Food Program. It's an amazing result. We work with Shiva and retailers. We personally believe that retailers are a real conduit of best practices. They are pioneers because they can influence the entire value chain. They can demand products which are healthier, organic, have better packaging or less packaging or no packaging at all, who have, for example, if you have plastic packaging, reduced amount of plastic, smaller caps. It's all driven by retail. And retail evolves themselves because they go digital, as Jerome said, e-commerce, but also not only they have loyalty cards, they now have personalized cards and offering. They can track consumer preferences. While tracking consumer preferences and having personalized approach, they can influence the full entire value chain. They can go back to Uran and say, you know what, I don't want this product anymore. And talking about dried fruit, for example, you can have new technologies of freeze-dry, which can help you reduce your cardboard and plastic packaging, for example, by 14 tons per year. That's what we did with a smaller producer in Turkey. But Central Asian companies can do the same. They have a great potential for that. So I firmly believe that Central Asia will continue being a core region for our investments. They have a great potential, but they have to be bold and brave.
Thank you very, very much. So that's a great line to end the session on, isn't it? I mean, huge potential, as we've heard, as we've discussed. Great technologies are available, new forms of sustainable thinking, but it does take courage, it takes initiative. Just a couple of quick points from me. I did mention the report. If you want a hard copy, go to Matthew after the session, and it will be available online as well. A lot of great information in there. Yeah, a lot to be done, but I think the fact that everyone's been so open about the good and the bad, and the fact that we do, unlike previous generations, have this, thanks to climate science and so many other analysts, we have the information now about what is likely to happen in the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And we do have the chance, if we act quickly, to get ready. So personally, I take great heart from that. A couple of little things just before we go. I've mentioned the report. Do come and get a copy afterwards. As you leave, there are 2 very smart tables at the side of the hall. There is some wonderful dried fruit from Central Asia. As you go, take a look, help yourselves. If you didn't get much lunch earlier, really help yourself. It's there for the taking. Any you leave behind, I'll certainly be trying to scoop into my pockets because I love Central Asian dried fruit. But that just leaves time for me to ask all of you, thank you for your contributions, and to ask you to thank my panel for a really great session. Thank you very much. Thank you.